Welcome to this presentation of the history of the Digger's Vest, proudly produced by Legends and Lessons and Mortel's Sheepskin Factory, the manufacturers of the Digger's Vest. While researching their book, Their Story, Service, Sacrifice and Community Support, Yvonne Fletcher and John Gillam of Legends and Lessons uncovered stories of a sheepskin vest being manufactured nationally in 1914 to provide the servicemen of the Australian Imperial Force and the British Army with warm clothing. To understand the level of community support afforded this vest, it is necessary to go back and understand the culture of the time. 100 years ago, Australia rode on the sheep's back, but prior to World War I, no sheepskin clothing industry existed in Australia. Sheepskin and wool were exported to overseas mills and factories for processing. In 1856, up to 2 million skins were being exported to England for processing. There were thoughts of locally manufacturing and exporting linings for Chinese clothing, but no action was taken on this initiative. It was said the sun never set on the British Empire. Any threat to either the King or the British Empire was seen as a direct threat to Australia. On August 3, 1914, Australia declared itself at war as part of the British Empire. 20,000 men were recruited, clothed, equipped and aboard the Great Convoy by November 1, 1914, bound for England. They were diverted to Egypt when the English training grounds were deemed too harsh in winter. It was known that a war fought in Europe, Turkey or Palestine during the winter would be bitterly cold, and the young men of Australia would be unprepared to face it. This is a story from the home front, where the combatants were family members and their weapons were innovation, self-sacrifice, determination, and most of all love. The communities of Australia would ensure that their sons would survive the harsh winter conditions by the practical donation of field kitchens for hot food and the sheepskin vests that would keep them warm. Many of the first men to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force slept rough, warmed only by their own coats and blankets. In training camps, while under canvas in winter, pneumonia would take its toll. After the hard slog of marches during the day, the cold desert winds of Egypt would chill to the bone. The Western Front trench warfare of 1916-17 was fought in the worst winter for 60 years. It was wet, bitterly cold, and slowly the water table rose, filling the trenches. Men died of pneumonia or froze to death in the flooded, muddy trenches, unable to move and restore circulation lest they invite sniper or shell fire. To fight the cold, the British Army chose a jacket of Moroccan goatskin. Pulled over the head and tied with rope, they were poorly tanned and known by those who wore them as the stinker, due to the smell given off by the jacket. Since 1914, Australia had been making an elegant and practical vest of Australian design. It featured straps to adapt to different sizes and to hold fast in cold winds. It was high on the collar to protect the neck and low across the back to prevent chills. It was made from easy-to-hand sheepskin and secured with buckles from horse bridles. This vest would save tens of thousands of diggers' lives. Anecdotes from prisoners of war also stated that they thought the vests were bulletproof, so fearless were the men who wore them. The Tan Sheepskin Clothing Committee had commenced operations on November 2, 1914. Eventually, their contractors would turn out 5,000 to 6,000 first-class vests per week. Patriotic committees, battalion committees, families, and even school children collected money to buy vests for their loved ones. The Army approved their use with the AIF khaki uniform, and a further 50,000 were given to the Tommies of England and to the Diggers of New Zealand. By 1916, 75,500 waistcoats and 61,000 inner soles were sent to soldiers at the front. The target was 1 million units by the war's end. By the winter of 1917-18, the fleecy sheepskin vest was replaced by a tanned leather jerkin that was harder wearing and easier to keep clean. The vests were made again in World War II, over 50,000 being produced for RAAF aircrew Navy sailors and in some army units. Here, ladies of the Country Women's Association are using production methods similar to those of 1914. During both wars, offcuts were made into mittens, gloves, inner soles and slippers for war orphans and wounded. In 2013, an alliance of Legends and Lessons and Mortel's Sheepskin factory began producing an authentic recreation of the 1914 sheepskin vest. These iconic vests can now be purchased from Mortel's Sheepskin factory. They are offered in a range of finishes and colours using the original style. The digger's vest was a symbol of community spirit, providing the binding link between the men and their loved ones at home. Today's descendants can link their vest to family history by having a personalised remembrance patch affixed to the vest, commemorating the service of their soldier. The digger's vest, as warm as those that gave them, as tough as the diggers who wore them.